Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matty Peverell, joined by my co-host as always, Marky Davison. Well, maybe I'm joining him because I wasn't here last week.
Yeah, what's going on, mate? Where you been? Eh?
Yeah, traveling around. Had an international work trip and then tacked a few days of vacation on top, and arrived back into sunny Australia yesterday. So,
did you give out BTSC? Like what do you call them? Like postcards to people and say what we're doing. Like business cards. Like everywhere you went, hey, I'm Matty from Touchdown Under. Do you want to subscribe to BTSC? Number one platform. Did you walk around Singapore and do that?
I didn't, but I did wear like Steelers shirts basically everywhere I went. I didn't realize how much of my t-shirt wardrobe is Steelers t-shirts.
I think I wear like at least 80% of my life.
I reckon
Steelers.
Easily.
It's easy, but the logo is awesome, right? The t-shirts are great. Like I'm wearing a jumper and underneath Iron City Beer because that's like the double trouble. Like people must know. I said, do you wear like your shirts at home in Australia wherever you go?
The jersey or t-shirts?
T-shirts when you're out and about.
Pretty much, like I have Steelers t-shirts.
They must be like people who see you around the shops, and then the locals must be like, oh, there's that guy again.
Yeah, pretty much, mate. There's another guy that has them too, and we always sometimes we go on the same beach walk and we just do like a little nod.
He has a Steeler t-shirt.
Yeah, and or shorts as well. And I've got some Steelers shorts. Anyway, we see each other and just like quiet nod. And we're both always like busy talking. Like I'll be with my my fiance, or like he'll be with a friend or whatever it is. And
for our new listeners, if you just found the show, welcome to Steelers Touchdown Under. But for our new listeners, right? It's quite funny in Australia. I've given up talking to people who wear NFL shirts because 9 times out of 10 they don't know who the team is.
Correct. Especially there's a brand called Cotton On here. And they're also, fun fact, they're also in Singapore, Mark. I got a Steelers t-shirt on discount there too, right? But they have the gear. They have like a few different American teams for different sports. I was shocked they did Steelers, but they're like, it's kind of like token, like most people buy this stuff, they don't even know where it's from. Anyway, I got some of the shirts on discount, but my fiance thought it was hilarious that we traveled like all the way, like halfway, or a quarter way up in the world. If you look at where the world is, 8-hour flight, and I still buy Steelers gear when we're away.
I did it as well. I did it when I went to Thailand. I went to one of those, shonky shops on the street. Bargained with a guy to get a $20 hat that was a Steelers hat, and I don't even wear hats. And I was like, probably worth $5, but
you've probably got like a Jen Jothersberger jersey.
Yeah, man, like just a rip-off. It's so funny, man, because like those Cotton On shops and those shops in Australia, they all sell the NFL gear. People buy it because it looks cool, and then I
don't think it looks cool when they had Browns and Ravens before they had Steelers. That was a joke.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they got a lot of Raiders too.
Raiders and Lakers. Raiders and Lakers.
Yeah, but there's some people could wear, like, it's so weird here in Australia. This is why, like, we guess we are a unique breed, because we actually understand the team. We love the team. We are all for the black and gold, and we understand the history, right? And you ask someone wearing a Steeler or whatever, and they don't even know who the coach is. They have no idea. Absolutely no idea. So
Correct. And then there's like, because they've got like the big sort of crew jumpers. And then like you've got like these girls walking around with these jumpers, and they're like 12 to 15 years old or whatever, and they've got all these NFL teams. And it's like most of you have no idea. And it's not the stereotype. It's just like you're in Australia, like you just have no idea.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I used to, when I was younger, I've actually given up trying. Like I did the other day on an Uber Eats delivery I did, right? This guy was wearing a Patriot jersey. I'm like, oh, what do you reckon about the season? And he went, pardon? What do you mean? I was like, aren't you a fan of the Patriots? He said, no, I just like the shirt. And I went, okay, see you later.
So I met a colleague, right? Or I say colleague from a partner company when I was on this work part. Anyway, we're a few drinks in, and Jen never worked at a Cotton On. There you go. Mark just brought that up in the live chat. But anyway, so we finished these drinks. We're getting the cab back to the hotel, and he goes, something came up about me being a Steelers fan, and he's like, oh, you know, well, you're going to hate me then. And so I'm cycling through all the teams that I hate. And eventually I'm like, oh, you go for the Patriots. And he's like, yeah, but mate, I've been supporting the Patriots when they were like 2-14. Like, and we had this crazy chat. I can't tell you the rest of what we discussed because I was well under the influence. But it was just funny, like, and he was talking football with me, but it's just funny the way you can connect. And he was another Australian, right? But I mean, you and I joke about Australians and always going for the Patriots. But it's just interesting when it comes up and it gives you something to connect on at a different level as well when you do have the passion for the Steelers.
Well, even the NFL, I know too. I've met a bloke on another Uber Eats delivery. If you want to meet people, guys, go and do Uber Eats. Shout out to those guys. I deliver food. Like I meet so many crazy people and good conversations. I met a guy who played American football in college, or had a chance to, or he played in the Sydney, and he actually got injured. I remember I was telling him how we discussed how, like, if you were to play American football and you get injured in Australia because people don't care. But he had you kind of like get that feeling like, do you know the NFL? Do I know the NFL? And you kind of like go back and forth, and you're like, you're my guy.
Yeah. There's that little bit where you're kind of talking. It's like when I went to the Steelers game, when I went to watch the Steelers game, we will get into the show in a sec, but it's good insight into fandom on the other side of the world. I went to the Steelers Minnesota Vikings game. It was on a Monday. I took the day off for us, so Sunday night, right? Obviously in the US. And I met these two Steeler guys, and we were sort of like talking, whatever. Anyway, I was like playing it down, like whether I knew a bit or whatever. Anyway, they start just saying stuff, and the commentator said something. I was like, "That's wrong," and I said it to Jess, my fiance, and they were like, they overheard me, and I was like, I can't believe that he would get that wrong. And then I was like, a little bit later on, this is on the pregame, and they were like, "Hang on, how do you know?" Actually, no, it wasn't. We went to the same venue for the Vikings. It was the Cleveland game, the game at home, the last one, right? And they were like, yeah, Ben's last game at home. And then they were like, after a little bit, they're like, hey, you know, you seem to know a lot. Like, you're like a super geek fan. And I was like, well, actually, I do this podcast every week with Marky D and Marky Davison. And, you know, then I do another podcast. I'm like, what? And I was like, yeah. And then we're talking through some stats. And they just sort of like moved closer on their table to our table. And then through the game, they're like asking me all these questions. But I didn't want to distract them from watching the game because we got talking.
No, 100%.
And I got talking.
It is true, though, because I've gotten to some points in conversation with talking about the NFL. And I always tell them about like 10 minutes in, if you want me to stop, pat me on the shoulder and tell me to stop, because I can talk about this forever. Like I can go down any kind of routes talking about if it goes into the Niners or Raiders or whoever it may be, because the NFL is so, you know, rich in history. And yes, we are a Steelers podcast, but the NFL is so intriguing in general, right? And you know when you've outstayed your welcome too, when you're just talking way too much about whatever you're talking about, and the guy's like, just nod, you're like, okay, no worries.
Well, I was talking to an American on this work trip as well, who has been in Asia for like 25 years, and he's a big Seahawks fan. And so eventually, because we were talking generally about NFL, I was like, oh, who's your team? And he was like, oh, I'm a Seahawks fan. And then I start talking a lot about, because I've done a lot with War Room, there's been a lot of chopping and changing with, you know, the Seahawks. So I've stayed across that as part of, obviously, the prep that I do for War Room. And so next thing we're talking Seahawks for about 15 minutes. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to go to the toilet now. And I got the message. So when he came back, no more talking about the Seahawks. I'd out-talk the Seahawks guy. And
that kind of sounds
Seahawks.
Like you're on a date with a lass and they kind of like don't like you, so they leave that way, you know? Yeah, I've definitely had that.
It wasn't a work event. He probably would have gotten the lift and left. Nah, he's a good bloke.
Maybe being so passionate about the NFL, you and I get way too excited talking about a guy who just like watches it casually, and we're like, you want to talk about the NFL? And then just get scared. It's like, But that's the reason why we're here. Honestly, that's the reason why you and I are here on this platform, right? So we can exhaust all the Steel energy and talk about these cuts.
That's it. And Brian, I did give those Steelers fans all the details. I think they listened to us on the audio side because I shared the Spotify stuff. But good to have the family in the live chat as well. Jed Evil, Brian Brown, George Teston. Here we go. All right. So there's a lot of, obviously, there's the Ogunjobi signing that's happened the last couple of weeks. Mark, very quick. what was your reaction to that? Because obviously we haven't really got to talk about
No,
it.
I'm kind of happy with it. I know he's a bit of a brawler, as we know what happened with Rudolph, but those kind of things that is passed over the head. It's like that was 2 years ago. It's all moved on. I kind of like the addition though, because that kind of sounds now, or looks like now, that the D line is set in a certain way. Of course, he needs to go out there and compete, but as just looking at it on paper value, good signing. I think it's a good signing for a year. Why not? 1 year deal. He played for the Browns. He played for the Bengals. Now he's a Steeler. Let's go win. What an ultimate goal to go win a Super Bowl this year and say, sucked in, Browns and Bengals. We got your guy and we won with him. MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we could win something with him. I've liked him for a long time. Regular guy, like I would pick up on Madden. I actually, and people can check the receipt. It's about 17 minutes in on I think it was the 24th of March. That was the day the podcast came out. I recorded it on the 23rd, where I was talking about free agents, and he was the one of the few guys on the D line that I said, and especially it was just after the Chicago Bears thing happened, and I was like, straight away, Steelers should bring this guy in. I wanted to bring them in before that, but I knew after the sacks he wouldn't be affordable. But I literally said, if Tuitt's not fit, bring Ogunjobi in. He's a guy I like. You can get him cheaper. Definitely after Chicago, given that he couldn't pass the medical. Bring him in, see what he can do. I said it also at the start of June. I think KT Smith and I said it literally within a couple of days of each other, and that I hadn't might have not even come out by the time I'd recorded War Room that week. So I've been on the Ogunjobi train for almost 5-6 months now. So for me, it's awesome to see Ogunjobi there, and I think if the Steelers fans as well, Tuitt was getting paid a lot of money. I don't think Steelers fans would have reacted well, if that person had been available to sign someone there, for plus 10 million, right? Or they would have done something with Akeem Hicks way earlier, because they knew about Tuitt, right? Obviously, Akeem Hicks signed with the Buccaneers right before the day before Tuitt, technically retired. And I know there's the June, 1st deadline that comes into that. But I think he's going to be really helpful for the Steelers defense, sorry. And also, as you said, Mark, you said the word Super Bowl there. They are tooling up that way. I'm not sitting here right now, at late June saying the Steelers are going to make the Super Bowl. But you can't help but think that they've filled a lot of roster spots by this point.
I was going to say, this offseason, what do you think of this offseason so far? It's just flowing, isn't it? It feels like after the big
there's a nice little hum to it. I mean, the guys on the preview talked about this yesterday night for you in the US, yesterday lunchtime for us. When they weren't bagging each other out. They talked a little bit about Omar Khan and just making decisions. And Omar Khan, I think, has really gone about, just doing things his way and working the numbers and stuff like that. The thing for me, though, I would have liked to have seen them say to work out with Ogunjobi a 2-year deal, right? Where it's team friendly the next year in terms of we can get rid of him, but there'd be instead of it being so incentive laden, just because of his age, I just thought 2 years would make it work. And then he's the sort of guy you might have for 4 or 5 years, but he goes through 2 contract cycles with the Steelers. I'm a little bit worried now because if we want to have a ball out year, but then how much are we going to have to pay him to keep him next year? And if not, then we get this speculation of is DeMarvin Leal ready? Do we have to draft another defensive, line guy and they go high in the draft? I just don't want to end up in that cycle. But to go back to your question, I mean, totally. I mean, the fact that we have a debate over do we start the top free agent quarterback or do we start the best quarterback in the draft?
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. Some teams are worried. Right now, there are 2 or 3 teams in the league wanting to trade for Baker Mayfield. Let's think about the position that we're in.
Who's that team? Where Drew Lock and is it Geno Smith out in Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah.
Yeesh.
They had a good team, though. If you're a quarterback, you want to go to that team. They got great wide receivers. You got George Fant. You got good running backs.
Yeah, but I stand by my statement. Yeesh. I think we're good. I think the offseason is a lot of fans or a lot of NFL media pundits have been saying, well, it's a rebuilding year. The Steelers haven't rebuilt this year. They've just been
I used the word in a Q&A a couple of weeks ago. I personally think it's the Steelers' way of rebuilding. I don't think we ever need a rebuild because we're such a good franchise. It's more like renovations. but like, or extensions to the house kind of thing. But I'm calling this a major refresh. Like it's a big software upgrade. Like it's like going from Windows 95 to like Windows XP or Windows 98 or whatever it is, right? Like there's a massive refresh going on. That's what I'm going to call it. Because I think I said this in this particular way on that Q&A show a few weeks back. I feel like what we're doing right now, we'll look back on in 3 years' time and say, look, it was technically a rebuild, but no one wants to call it a rebuild now. Do you know what I mean?
I know I'm a biased fan, but I do like a lot of the offseason moves 100%. I'm telling you, this is a real good feeling about post Big Ben era because we brought in 3 QBs and we're like, that hasn't really happened ever in like 17 years. So I'm feeling good about it,
Well, the other thing too, like that I was thinking, I thought that's interesting, which ties into where we want to go in the show today, is that we talk about it there, that rebuild. And Mike Tomlin, they were talking, he's talking about Ben Roethlisberger. He talked about a lot of the money being tied up with Roethlisberger, and now they can spread it around, the team. But he said with that spreading around, there's a lot of playmaking that needs to happen. The playmaking is spread around as well. And so I think that's an exciting thing where we've got these like the wide receiver room, and you've got Najee, and you've got Freiermuth, and on the defense, we've really tooled up there as well. So I think it's interesting to see who's going to make the plays that are going to win the games. And so that leads well into what Mark and I wanted to talk about today. And that's like, as this roster takes shape, who are the odd men out? And Mark, I thought a good place to start with that probably is like maybe defensive end and defensive lineman. I mean, so I'll run through the guys. I'll run through the general guys, and then we can talk about who might be the odd man out. So obviously you got Tyson Alualu, DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, Henry Mondeau, Daniel Archibong, Chris Wormley, Montravius Adams, Carlos Davis, Khalil Davis, Cameron Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. I mean, that's your defensive tackles, D-line, and defensive end according to the Steelers roster right now. I mean, it's an interesting situation. Like, particularly when you think about like a guy that was, Jeffrey Benedict talked a lot about last season in a Henry Mondeau. How do you see it? How do you see it falling out right now?
Just based off the strength of the D line there, I would probably say Henry Mondeau might be the odd man out because you're bringing in Larry Ogunjobi there, possibly maybe a starter at defensive end, or if they've, Tyson Lewis can start as well. It's so difficult because I like the D line this year. I really do. Heading into, I like the fact that Isaiah Loudermilk, I think he's ready to play. Or based off interviews, I've seen him, his speech. I think he's ready to play. So maybe it could be Carlos Davis and Henry Mondeau on the outside looking in. But that's a good problem for us fans, not for the players.
But and this is the thing. Like, I'd be interested to see as well, like who sits there and who gets the practice squad spots. That'll give you a good indication. Like, because I think Henry Mondeau, I'm not sure whether he qualifies anymore from the, there's a technical name for it, but basically the youth players, like the old school practice squad before they added the veteran spots, right? I don't think he qualifies for one of them anymore. And would you put him on a veteran spot? Like, would another team want to go after him as well? Like, that's what I always find interesting. Like, Dan McCullers, found a home. Isaiah Buggs found a home. Like, when it comes to Steelers defensive linemen, as soon as we take them off the 53, they manage to find homes. I think people, teams recognize they're well trained. And Mondeau's young enough that I think a team would take a flyer on him.
Yeah, it could do, but I think now the addition of Ogunjobi and Leal, well, and even Tuitt leaving as well. So the D line, I think looks better than last year. Because I liked what they did with Montravius Adams too, and Alualu's coming back, but maybe Alualu, we don't know what we have seen him.
How could it not be? But exactly, you've hit the nail on the head. How is it not better? They've got everyone they had last year because we didn't have Tuitt, right? You've got Montravius Adams in there for an off season. He knows how the Steelers work. He's not coming mid-season. You also get Alualu back. You draft Leal and you bring Ogunjobi.
Yes, very true, right?
Like 3 players for the better, and they're all like technically. I mean, I know Leal's not a starter yet, but like, you would hope that within the one season, this guy's a starter. I mean, at the end of the day, at least he's very good depth piece. The Steelers have had like I would, if you talk about pluses and minuses, they were -1 with Tuitt, last year. Now they're and no -2 with Alualu and Tuitt out from this roster. Now they're +3. I mean,
what do you think about it? Because Montravius Adams, I think he can start, but maybe not all the time. But same with like Alualu, like he had a year off and he's got injured, right? And maybe he's 35 years old, so maybe he's near the end of his career. Maybe this could be the very, they talk about the bus going home or whatever to win Super Bowl. Maybe this could be Alualu's last season as a football player, and maybe he knows that. And he's had quite a big career. I think he's been 14 years in the league or something, or 13 years.
Yeah, he was I think he was the 10th draft pick. He was definitely the first round draft. I think he was the 10th draft pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
This might be the one that he says, well, I'm going to go out there and just go as hard as I can because I know it's my last year. And let's try to get the playoffs and try and go win the championship. So I'm not saying we can do that, but there's a feeling of that. And the other side of the coin is like, well, he's injured. We don't know what we're going to see from him. But that's why they brought in the other guys.
But it also goes back to what we talked about with Joe Schobert and Devin Bush last year. You now can let Alualu, he doesn't have to play a billion snaps to start the season. Do you know what I mean? You can work him in, right? And that's helpful. He can spell Cameron Hayward. He can spell other guys. Like, you could almost have, in the way they operate it, yes, you probably want him to be the nose tackle, but you can bring up, like, you can do things with other players. You can have Montravius Adams do some of that work and lighten the load on Alualu as well. That's what I like about it, because we just want to take, like, on that defensive line and the outside linebackers, you just want to be able to rotate them, right? And just constantly get guys. Like, I think Leal, I think they could line him up in some formations, way outside as well, like, and spell Highsmith and what, right? But I think they've done well with a guy like Avery too, bring him in. But I just think you want to cycle those guys in and out. You want that offensive line going, oh my God, and just getting smacked in the mouth like constantly. So I think that's pretty interesting. Well, let's keep on the defensive side of things. Let's go cornerback. Now, it's important to note that a guy like Chris Steele is listed as a defensive back, and so is Trey Norwood. So the cornerback list on the roster right now is Justin Lane, Arthur Millette, James Pierre, Cameron Sutton, Levi Wallace, and Akello Witherspoon. Is there an odd man out in that cornerback room?
Is it Justin Lane? Because I don't know, because they signed Arthur Millette for 2 years. Like they're not going to cut Arthur Millette, right?
I wouldn't think so with what they do. I think I could see Arthur Millette going to the practice squad though, in one of those veteran spots.
I think it might be either Justin Lane or your mate James Pierre, right?
Yeah. Do you keep the undrafted guy that you've tried to play a little bit, or do you keep Justin Lane? Like, I mean, James Pierre's a year older. Out of Florida at Atlantic, went undrafted, right? Like, Justin Lane's got 7 pounds on him. Is a lot quicker than him. I mean,
because for me, you're keeping Wallace, you're keeping Sutton, you're keeping Witherspoon, you're keeping Millette, Norwood, and who's the rest? Who would be the odd man out? Maybe Pierre or Lane, and then give.
Well, and they could both be the odd, but they both could be the odd man out.
See ya.
Right? But they both could be the odd man out. Like Chris Steele could have a really good. I mean, I really liked him out of USC. I thought he was a great guy to get in round 6. In the 6th round, they got him undrafted, even better. But he's a big hitter. He's 21 years old, right? 6'1", 190 pounds, same size as all those guys. But he's 21, right? He's a guy you can stash. So for me, like, when we talk about Lane is lame, I agree he's underperformed, but also like he's a man, defender, and the Steelers play zone, way more. But if you think about, I just labeled their 6 cornerbacks, and then you've got, a guy like a Trey Norwood and a Chris Steele, that are listed as defensive backs. So if you add Trey Norwood into the mix, being able to flex there, even, from that perspective, it's, again, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Who is the odd man out? I think there's 2 odd men out right now.
Well, it's definitely not Trey Norwood. I like Trey Norwood going to his second year this year. I really do. I watched a game, Hall of Fame game, just for kicks the other day. Like his first game, right, to see some of the players.
Oh, he was in
his vision. I know you're excited too. His vision is crazy. Like he is just.
Well, I remember putting the Slack channel on that game. He had, I think it was one dropped interception, and he had where like he dropped the ball, he was diving for it basically. And there were two where when you look at the tape, you're like, if you were like 3 steps ahead, and yes, some of that is speed, but some of it's more just coaching, being in the right position. I was like, oh my gosh, if
he was
you
so
like
instinctive,
3
man.
steps, you're exactly where the ball needs to be. Like I knew then.
100%.
I remember I tweeted out. I was like, not tweeted out. I put it in our BTSC Slack channel at the time. I was like, if he can get that positioning right, he is going to do incredibly well for a 7th round draft.
Imagine this offseason now working on his craft even more because I look back to that Bills game too. The Bills game where he made 3 tremendous tackles and pass deflections, and they had a bit of a quiet year, along the way. But that's the way how it works. Your rookie year. But this defense is so set now as well to be top 5. To add a player like him to be where he is good, and this defense can make him great and just make big splash plays.
But you as well, and I know he didn't play huge snaps every game, but there are some key plays. We talk about Minka coming right in toward the box. You can't allow Minka to come into the box if you're worried about what's going on behind you. And we know that while Terrell Edmonds has played deep safety, the way they use him often as well doesn't mean that he's sitting there anymore. There are plays, you can go back through the season where Minka makes a big play, and it's not every single Minka play because Trey Norwood, I think, only played like 30 or 40% of between 30 and 40% of the defensive snaps. But if you go back and look at some of those key plays, you'll find Norwood's in there behind him, or when there's a key pass breakup or Minka's making a play, Norwood's in and around that area of the field, like they're working together. And I think that's the exciting thing for Norwood. Like as you just said, I'm really keen for year 2 of Norwood.
Well, any cornerback on this defense should be so happy having Highsmith and TJ on the outside, right? Even to a point, like we could do a whole show. The Highsmith, your mate, is a forgotten man. The forgotten man on the defense. He really is. He's the forgotten man.
He's got to have a big year though. He's got to have a big year to get because he's got re-signing coming up.
I don't know, but you think about TJ Watt on the other side, and I think this defense, if it's on, can perform like it is on paper in our minds and how we want it to perform, it's going to be so exciting to watch. And I think the fellas like Trey Norwood having a go out there will definitely improve because I think there's always that time where the rookie season is so long for these fellas, and you have like a full off season, and you're going back to it's like going to any new job, right? For the second year, you're kind of more relaxed, more comfortable, ready to play. That's my Heinz Field, that's my stadium, I'm excited to see it, but in terms of like cuts, I think on the outside looking in is definitely Justin Lane and Pierre at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I just had a thought while you were saying that. I know we're going back to defensive line, but it shows you and I love our defense, right?
100%.
I would love to see a formation where Cameron Hayward's at the nose tackle position or the 1 position, right? And then you've got Liao Ogunjobi, and then you've got Highsmith, and you've got like the speed. Like that pocket is just gonna it's gonna be like dominoes. See you later. Like just a quarterback's got like his 5-man pass rush. Oh, it'd be so good to see. Please, Brian Flores, draw it up. All right, so we talked about defensive linemen there, defensive tackles. Now, inside linebacker, there's only 1 person registered there, Ulysses Gilbert, but we'll include him in the linebacker one. So Gilbert, Marcus Allen, Devin Bush, Alex Highsmith, Miles Jack, Buddy Johnson, Tyree Johnson, even though he's probably more outside, T.D. Moultrie, Mark Robinson, Delonte Scott, Tuzar Skipper, Robert Spillane, and then TJ Watt's listed as a linebacker. I'm not going to count him. He's definitely not an odd man out.
How many bloody linebackers are there?
Well, 18? Some of those guys play on the outside. I mean, and then you go, and then all right, we'll do the outside linebackers too. And then you've got, Jannard Avery and Derek Tutska.
All right, I'll be controversial and walk over the eggshells that I created. Tuzar Skipper's probably the old man out, really. But I still like the chance for the guy to get there. But you've named about 19
one
people.
old man out. This is a long list of players.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You've named about 19 people. So
90, man.
it's who the probably the easiest one to I guess cut would be Scott Delonte. I think. Yeah, out of everyone else. You know what? I will answer my question this way. It's got to be TJ Watt. It's going to be Highsmith, Devin Bush, and Miles Jack. And I think Buddy Johnson and Spillane will stay there. So all the other guys, well, I don't know. I don't know about the other guys.
So you got to think Mark Robinson's going to make the practice squad, surely, unless he has a really bad camp. So wait. So who are your 5? I don't think they're going to keep more than 5. They'll definitely keep 4.
Inside linebacker or outside linebacker?
Inside.
Inside linebacker. Ooh, okay. All right. Okay. So I go Devin Bush, Miles Jack for sure. It has to be Buddy Johnson has to stay. Spillane, I think,
has to stay. Okay. Yeah, I think
surely.
so.
I think so. I think
I want him to stay. I just at the moment they keep re-signing Marcus Allen, right? So and so I don't know when it comes to the linebackers.
Odd man out is UG3 and Marcus Allen.
I think so. I mean, UG3, you want to stick him on your practice squad. I keep having this thing, though, where I see him leaving. Whenever he leaves the Steelers, some other team are going to grab him and he's going to do really well. I've said this to you maybe 6 or 7 times in the last 2+ years we've been doing the show.
Well, I just think a lot of these players are bigger and better than Marcus Allen, what he can provide. So, and do you want to cut Robinson or put him on the practice squad? I think Buddy Johnson is better than Marcus Allen. I think as Pittsburgh Steelers, they will keep Spillane because they like him.
That's the thing. I think Spillane's there because he does the dirty work, right? And he's there. He's kind of your insurance if Buddy Johnson doesn't start making, leaps and strides.
Yeah, but who are your blokes? You're cutting your mate, Marcus Allen.
Oh, I got to bring this up. Exactly. The Steelers cut Quincy Ray-Shea, even though thank you. Appreciate it. Brian Brown, what a legend. Thank you very much. Sorry. You said who do I think's going?
Yeah. Who's odd man out for you in the middle linebacking core?
Well, I think Ulysses Gilbert. The thing is, he's quick, and that I think they think he can do more. But I think it would be I putting all my emotion aside. I would think it would be odd that you would keep Marcus Allen and Ulysses Gilbert with the skill set that they bring athletically. So I think they're out. I also think the biggest thing for Marcus Allen apparently is he can make good tackles, but he's very light for a linebacker at 215. That's what you've got Buddy Johnson and Spillane in there for. So I don't really get it. Like you'd have to, I would have to think.
You know what's interesting though? On the Mike Tomlin, he had a podcast with the Pivot Podcast guys the other day.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Asked a very similar question about when do you know when a player's time is up? And he's kind of like, his answer was, I don't know his answer by the actual words, but the theme of the answer was, well, you kind of just know. You kind of just know that they've had enough. So
I think we kind of all knew about Marcus Allen a long time ago.
But maybe that's the point. Maybe this year they're like, all he can do is this much.
They're paying Marcus Allen like $2 million.
I know. I'm not arguing with you, right?
I mean, he's the first one to go. If a good player gets cut, like you cut Marcus Allen.
I can't wait to see your reaction when someone else goes and he stays. But Tom made a good point. It's like, well, these players, the players.
I'll do an Andrew Wilbur.
But the players will know. Tom will know, and it's to the point where maybe Marcus Allen is off the roster this year. And
I love Mike Tomlin. I listened to the whole thing. I've listened to it 1.5 times, right? I had a big plane ride. It wasn't just that. There were plenty of good movies to watch. Like I really enjoyed it. I think Mike Tomlin's got a lot of leadership. But he's also, you can tell, got a thick head. And maybe Marcus Allen's just taken a long time to get into the thick head.
I don't know, man.
Marcus Allen is a drafted player by Kevin Colbert, not Omar Khan. Right, he was a re-signed player by Kevin Colbert. Omar Khan knows where the dollars are spent. He talked in his press conference in joining about bringing analytics into the game, and the analytics will show you that Marcus Allen is not worth over 2.1 million or whatever.
Is this a bad time to bring up that I've got Marcus Allen on Twitter and he's coming on the show next week? Is that a bad time?
Good, join me, mate. 215. I'll line up against you. I'm almost 200. I'm the same height. I'll do it. He'd cream me. He's a professional athlete, but like at the same time, I can still sit there and tell you that you're not worth $2 million.
All right, next position.
That's what she said.
Jesus Louises. I've only got one style. Okay.
Right. Let's move on. Safety. Terrell Edmonds, Mika Fitzpatrick, Carl Joseph, DeMonte Kazee, Miles Killebrew, Donovan Steiner.
Has to be Steiner, right? Because they're not getting rid of Killebrew. There's no way. There's no way they're getting rid of Killebrew. He was
terrific on special teams last year.
He was just a beast. Got 2 pump blocks. He's a good tackler. Probably knows the ins and outs of the special teams. That probably the 2 odd men out are probably Carl Joseph and Steiner. Steiner for sure. He's not making the team.
So you know what else? Like I've sat on this one for a while. I wanted the right time for it to come up. I did a war room on like the 10th of February. and I looked through the safeties on the list, and I was like, literally, the two guys I would do, I went through them all. I said, because he would be a good depth piece, but I would sign Terrell. I went through and I said, Terrell Edmonds looks like the best guy on the list because he's a great depth piece. And then I finished it by saying, if I were the Steelers, I would probably sign Terrell Edmonds and do my best to get DeMonte Kazee as depth piece. That's exactly what they did. I did it 3 months before it happened. Maybe Omar Khan. I've always mentioned Omar Khan in the intro to War Room. Maybe he listens. I don't know.
That'd be fair.
Of course not, right? The Steelers are the experts. But I'm just saying, I just find it funny.
You never know. You never know. They could obviously listen and get ideas. Why not?
Well, we're considered new media if you look at the way people classify media.
But it's still ideas. It's still a train of thought, and if that was the idea he may look into than Kazee. So you may have you bought Kazee. Congratulations.
I don't know. I'm telling you. All I'm saying is it's just was funny. I was going back and looking through some old podcasts the other day to see what I'd focused on, who I'd done. And I remember talking about the safety position, and I was just like, oh, I'm sure I talked about Kazee. And then I was like, oh, even I said that. But anyway, looking at this room, I bring that up because I think we didn't see enough of Kyle Joseph play last year. And I think with what Kazee brings to the table, I don't see him being out. So I would say it's Killebrew, Kazee, Fitzpatrick, Edmonds. That's your four safeties.
It's also a very good, probably a good camp battle as well between Joseph
and big time.
So yeah, we didn't see enough of him last year on the practice squad. I think he may have played a few snaps, but didn't really do too much. And it's kind of getting accustomed to the defense. And now that we signed Edmonds and Minka, Edmonds for 1 year, it's what's depth? Because Killebrew isn't really depth at safety. He's more special teams leader or possibly the captain. So do you go in with five safeties there? But also Trey Norwood can play safety too. So
but that's what I was about to say. I think Kyle Joseph goes back to the practice squad, and then so you've got 5 cornerbacks and 4 safeties, and then Trey Norwood's the flex guy between the two. And I mean, you could kind of call Mollett a flex guy, but I think we're labeling Mollett as a SWAT corner in the 5 cornerback room. So then you keep him 10.
It's very intriguing how this is playing out because you've locked up Minka for 5 years, and you've brought back his mate, or a great addition to the team. Which
I was pretty close on his deal as well, actually.
I'm telling you, they listen to you. What else are you gonna do?
But I was literally almost with the guarantee and the full money. I was right. I was within $1 million on the full money, and the guarantee I was a little bit off. But I had done it as not including the way the years and the structured work that they did it. And
Omar Khan's literally just sitting there going, all right, okay, you said this. All right, Matty said
that was Kevin Colbert's parting gift. Kevin Colbert said, he said Kendrick Green would be good. Here you go.
Honestly, it wouldn't put it past me that some of they don't listen to all podcasts, but they have to listen to something. What are the general managers listening to? What's Coach Tomlin listening to?
AC/DC.
Yeah. Just rocking out in the room. No, the safety position is quite intriguing this year. I do like it because a lot of young fellas there, and who's going to be depth. And yeah, for sure, having Killebrew, who used to play safety for the Lions and now a leader on the special teams.
But the thing about Killebrew, right? And again, putting aside the emotion of what I feel for Marcus Allen, which is nothing, only negativity, unfortunately, is he's a big body, he's 215 pounds, and they're trying to move him to linebacker, right? Now he may have put on more weight in this offseason, and the Steelers roster depth chart hasn't updated it, but Killebrew is listed at 222. Do you want Killebrew in playing that role, or do you want Marcus Allen playing that role? And what Killebrew does on special teams is fantastic. So, I think you're right there. And having Trey Norwood that can flex. The interesting thing for me about this too is you look at Kazee, you look at Norwood, particularly there, and even if you factor in Mollett in playing some hybrid roles, you've got a cool situation where Minka's I think Minka's playing way more to the box like he did last year, for sure. Because they're a lot more deep safeties.
Did you put in the title defense and only defense and nothing but defense?
I did realize partway through the show that we're only going to get through defense. So this is going to have to be a 2-part series. We're going to be doing offense next week. So sorry for the fans out there that like the offense. I realized that about 25 minutes in. I was like, not going to happen.
Well, it's because come the training camp time, there's going to be so many different battles, or before the depth piece, and safety will be one of them, and also outside linebacker will be one of them too, and behind and who's going to be the rotation of the defensive line. So I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. No, it's the offseason, we're getting pumped up, but there's some really good moves going on for sure.
100%, 100%. So, in fitting with the theme, odd squared, who is the oddest man out of the odd men out that we just talked about?
The oddest of the oddest, but not like an easy cut, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm saying the easiest cut.
The easiest cut ever you'd ever think of.
Yep, amongst all the players we talked about.
Daniel Archibong.
Yeah, or Lyndon Stevens.
Yeah, but a guy that I guess.
But then, who would be the longest odds to be cut out of everyone we talked about? Now, I don't want to. We don't have a silly answer like Cameron Hayward or TJ Watt. And live chat, I'd be interested for you guys to throw something into. Out of all the Steelers defensive players, who would be the longest odds? So, who would be the most surprising cut out of all the defensive positions we've talked about? And yet, with anything Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Levi Wallace, Akello Witherspoon, Miles Jack, or Devin Bush doesn't count.
Okay, so what I'm gonna go this kind of route. Maybe do they have a role for James Pierre that we don't know about? Like, are they just gonna take a chance on him? So maybe if he gets cut, I don't know. Maybe he might be a surprise.
I mean, I wondered on Travis Adams. I mean, obviously we could say like Larry Ogunjobi if his foot's not right, but I don't think that's gonna be a situation. But I don't think so with Adams because of the way that his deal is structured. I don't think you could get rid of Wormley. I think he had 7 sacks. I don't know. Isaiah Loudermilk, I wonder about him. I know they've invested in him. And they're not going to cut Alualu with a year to go. Cameron Sutton, he's too good at the price that they're paying him. And his deal, I don't think is very friendly for them to cut this year.
Josh Parker from Facebook says Spillane. I agree with that. If they cut Spillane, I'd be like, what? Are you, really?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It'd be that or Lane. And the reason why I say Lane is because they don't like cutting a third-round draft pick. But yes, I agree. I think Spillane's that longest odds guy. I think that's a great tip from Josh Parker.
And then Brian Brown says here Arthur Millette too would be a surprise cut as well. So, and I really agree with that too.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know what would be a surprise cut for me? Marcus Allen, because they seem to find a way to not to get rid of him. It'd be a nice surprise. It'd be like Santa's, this opening up the Christmas presents.
Man, you've changed since Singapore. I thought you used to like Marcus. I thought you used to like Marcus Allen.
I hated Marcus Allen.
Thought you were best buds.
Maybe they cut to our skipper. The other guy would be Jannard Avery. And I don't think he's got a guaranteed spot on the roster. But I think it's a long odd in that he's an experienced player. You bring him in, he shores up that outside linebacker room. Maybe you're putting him there on the practice squad. But I think to cut him would be, an interesting move. Again, while you keep, a Marcus Allen and a two-star skipper on.
When do the cuts start after the first preseason game, right?
Correct. They've got to go down from that. Yeah.
Yeah. You think the players know playing that game they're going to be cut?
Sure. I wonder sometimes whether I wonder whether you go into a game and you're like, oh man, I'm going to be cut here. But as well, they should still show out because there's other teams watching. You always want to put good stuff.
Yeah, that was a kind of a cheeky.
Usually they make a few cuts in training camp in the first couple of days, and then they bring other people in. They've probably got on the roster right now 4 or 5 guys that are fringe that they want to bring in, or another team will cut someone, and you're like, that's a guy we wanted, or it's an undrafted free agent, we wanted. Let's bring him in, right?
Well, it's kind of interesting now too because we have the USFL had their season. I think the championship coming up soon. This week, I think it's the championships or the semifinals.
Is Birmingham in there?
Yeah, they are actually. They went
my Birmingham Stallions. Go the Stallions.
Oh, they had the advantage because they had the home stadium. But what I'm trying to say is and I don't mean to take the cuts lightly, but it's now a chance for these players who are third or fourth. And those guys are trying 100%. I'm not discounting that, right? But there's not much room also. Also, in the Mike Tomlin podcast, I think he said something like this. He said the difference between a pro bowler and a depth piece is availability or something like that, didn't he say?
Yeah, he said it's availability, but sometimes it's the opportunity as well. How much time you get
Exactly.
Like, how much time do you put them in? And they talked about the guy that replaced Ryan Clark, TC, and then we're like, he had 2 receptions.
So that was a good point. And then if the XFL comes back, these players get a shot, which I like, because if you're the third or fourth guy, like Spillane could start in the USFL all day, every day, right? Or XFL.
Probably it. No, he'd be your number one. He'd be arguably like one of the league's best thumpers, probably.
He'd be the linebacker and the running back and the quarterback. He'd be all over the shop. But like, it's the cuts are hard. But these players, when I said, do they know they're going to
Jordan Berry? He got cut, right?
He's still playing.
Packing the bags back to Australia. Then the Steelers bring him back because of cold quit, and then the next season, he gets drafted by the Vikings. He was one of the league's best indoors, but he was one of the league's best punters last year.
I've got him on Instagram still, and I see some really odd stories here and there. Like, he's still going, mate. He's with Minnesota Viking now. So, but yeah, I think the players know.
He's a top 8. I think he's a top 8 punter last year.
Really? There you go.
Yeah. But the point being is that they can find homes.
Yeah, and they always keep trying their hardest, but it's like some guys like Donovan Steiner, you just know won't make the team. Like
and Lyndon Stevens,
Yes, so they maybe practice squad, or they may go into another team, or like I said, the XFL or USFL. So, man, we're getting closer, eh? Aren't we getting closer and closer to training camp?
It's good, man. It's good. I want you know what? As well, as horrible it is for those players, when they start making cuts, the season's upon us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, here we go. Let's get it going. We're cooking breakfast, so this is good.
It's all part of the business. They know it, right? It's all part of it. So, and the coaches, if you've seen those Hard Knocks videos, they walk in and say, "Thanks for your time, mate. We appreciate you." And then they go, "Yeah, thanks." Okay, they know it, right? It sucks, but they know it. They go and find another team if they can, or CFL or whatever. Like, it's all part of it, but it's fun for us as fans to know our 53, and then we can be like, okay, are you ready to rumble? Let's go.
Brian Brown says he was better than Harvin. Don't tell Jeff. He was at some points better. Harvin dealt with a lot of mental things. He'll be a better player for that.
Next week's podcast, Harvin. We're talking Harvin, I reckon. No, we're doing the offense. But
we're doing offense.
I
like this show, though. I like that. I like doing that.
It's a big week. It's a big test for Harvin this year, I think, too.
So Claude Bishop says, do you think that Brian Flores has a big impact on the Steelers defense? I think he's already had a big impact on the Steelers defense, is my response to that, judging by what Tomlin said, judging by interviews 100%. With different people, interviews with Minka when he signed the deal on Steelers.com. I think he's having a big impact from the get-go. How could he not? The guy should be a head coach.
Yeah, go listen to the Mike Tomlin podcast on the Pivot podcast. He really just...
And then read the summary article on Behind the Steel Curtain.
Yeah, 100%. That too. But like, it's a good insight to our team, for sure. Like, really good insight.
Oh, mate, I saved it. I've downloaded it. It's on my phone. I've now got an hour and 25 minutes. If I get stuck anywhere, I've got an hour and 25. I can just script the Tomlin's different. And I watched some bits over again, as well. So it was a great show. Anything else you want to chat about quickly before we wrap up the show for another week?
No, I'm just so keen that we got, we're one week closer to the season starting. My last thought is I'm kind of, the QB1, QB this, QB that, right? I'm just excited to see Trubisky pass a ball and Pickett pass a ball in the uniform. We forget about that, right? QB1, QB this, QB that, right? But this will be Pickett's first time passing a football as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Correct.
Preseason, man. Preseason means a lot this year. It's pretty exciting stuff to see these quarterbacks.
I'd be interested to see how much. You know what? I'm interested to see how much he plays during the preseason.
Who, Pickett?
Yeah, I think he will. In fact, next week we should do like an over and under on, how many snaps he will actually have. Because if he's close to winning that battle, I don't think they're playing him as much as everyone thinks they does. That they think they do.
Intriguing. All right, I'll save my answer to next week. If I remember.
And Brian Brown finishes with an interesting comment on the Steelers defense should be number one in the league, barring injury. There's no excuses. I personally am not convinced on the cornerback room still, but the defense as a unit, I agree, should be a lot better. And especially defending, there are no excuses defending the run now. Like they have gotten really good there. That if they can't fix that, then that they need to scrap a lot of these guys.
You think about
particularly with Cam Hayward's leadership.
The additions of the players they brought in and the addition of coaching as well. It's set up to be that way, but let's see what happens.
If you're Devin Bush, right, you're gonna make like if you can find a way to put it together. The guy was a top 10 draft pick at the end of the day as well, right? Like you're coming back second year off the ACL, and you've got Brian Flores coaching, and you were that quick off on the ball. If you can just get that mongrel brat back, it's a word we use here, a slang word we use for physicality. If you can get that mongrel back, that's going to be awesome with Miles Jack.
It's overall, I think this is why I love defense. Like this does remind me of 2008, 2009, those players coming in. But we'll see what happens because it's on paper now. But it's looking pretty good. I'm excited.
Can I just say, by the Pivot podcast, I love the Lamar Woodley story. That got me going. That was so good.
I must have missed that part.
So basically, to recap it, so no one has to go anywhere else. Sorry, bad, we're going over. Basically, when Larry Fitzgerald went down the field and scored the touchdown in 08, and then Ben and Holmes came back and scored the other one. The defense was still really shell-shocked, and no one was listening, and all the players were freaking out, and all the defensive players were like, we don't want to lose number one defense. We're the number one defense. We've lost the Super Bowl. We've made a mistake. And Tomlin went up to try and tell one of them something to do, and he could tell all these veterans were like, they're mentally like they were done. So he went up to Woodley because he was the youngest player on the team, and he was just kind of being casual because he didn't really understand the full gravity at the time of or at least didn't show the gravity situation. Just from his body language, Mike Tomlin went up to him, even though he was the youngest player starter on the defense, and he went, well, Wood, I need you to go make a play, go win us the game. And he's like, I got it, coach. And then he went out and he put an end to the game, right?
Man, he was underrated. Lamar Woodley was a machine.
Oh yeah, 100%.
He was a machine. It was so fun to watch.
Catching up or like refreshing on some of that stuff over the last couple of seasons. You go back, and that name on that jersey, he is around like so many big plays if he's not making it himself. Like I would say around the football, like I said in the show, if you're around that, like the good players will gravitate to the football. They might not always make the play, but you've got to be in the vicinity to make the play, right? And also it's physics. Someone might get hit this way, they might step that way, or what have you. But you've got to be around the ball. It's when guys aren't around the ball, or they're in the frame, if you like, of the TV camera or the just the camera that's taking the photo. And then like you just like that guy's never going to be able to contribute. But if they're in there and around the play, like, to me, and they're in and around the play 85% of the time, it's like when Hayward, ran down. It was at the Kansas City game in season. He ran the guy down. The good players will be in there.
100%. Josh Parker from Facebook, mate. Timmons was
agree.
Another one like
that. 100% agree. Yeah. Another jersey, another name that you always saw in the mix.
Those two blokes, Timmons and Woolley, were just football guys. They were football players. And
that's why, and Spillane is a football player. That's why he's going to stay on this roster. But with that, that's another Steelers touch down under. I'm Matty Peverell with Marky Davison as always.
Go Steelers.